Hein? Et, et donc, on va avoir la chance d'écouter Rocio Rincon nous parler du travail qu'elle fait à l'Université de Cordoba, où elle est maître de conférence. Avec Rocio, on se connaît depuis une petite dizaine d'années parce qu'elle elle a suivi le travail de Paul Brunet, qui était doctorant à PROMES, c'est la première thèse sur les nanomatériaux par plasma à pression atmosphérique. Et Paul a passé du temps à l'Institut national de la recherche scientifique du Canada, et il travaillait là avec Rocio, qui était en postdoc à l'époque. Donc, ensuite, après ce postdoc, elle a obtenu un poste de maître de conférence à l'Université de Cordoba, où elle avait fait sa thèse auparavant. Et là, elle travaille avec des plasmas à pression atmosphérique, mais c'est des plasmas micro-ondes, donc beaucoup plus chauds que les nôtres, on peut dire ça. Et elle les étudie, et puis elle fait des matériaux aussi avec. Donc, comme à Promesse, on est quand même plus matériaux que plasma, je lui ai conseillé de moins nous parler de toute la partie diagnostic du plasma qu'elle fait, étude du plasma, et plus des matériaux et des applications auxquelles elle s'intéresse. Mais si vous avez des questions sur la partie plasma, il ne faut pas hésiter à discuter avec elle, puisque nous avons la chance de la voir pour un an jusqu'au mois d'octobre, puisqu'elle a obtenu un financement pour aller passer un an dans un laboratoire étranger. Elle a choisi de venir avec nous, donc on en est très heureux. On apprécie beaucoup que tu sois là, Rocio, et je te laisse la parole.
Okay. Thank you very much, Françoise, for the introduction and for the invitation to have this talk today. And also, I would like to thank the French community of cool plasmas for being also interested in this talk. I would like to not be too long explaining many things, but you know, sometimes when you like what you are talking about, the time passes and you don't even realize. So I will try to be on time and not to be too long, and after all the talk, we can discuss some points that you can have some doubts or whatever you want. So the outline of this talk is divided into three main parts. First, I would like to introduce you the research group where I'm doing my research. After that, the core of the presentation will be the fundamentals of atmospheric pressure micro discharges, but more specifically, I will pay attention to the application that we are developing, which are hydrogen production and graphene formation. And after that, just to finish the presentation, I would like to share with you which are our ongoing research and what are we planning for future. So let's start by introducing you my laboratory. As Françoise said, I'm coming from Cordoba, which is a city in the south of Spain. I'm working as a professor at the University of Córdoba, which is a medium-sized university. I teach fundamental physics at the science faculty of the university in the degrees of physics and chemistry. But I am not only in teaching lectures at the university, I have also to research, and also it's something that I really like. I'm working in my research group, which is named Laboratory of Innovation in Plasma. There are 9 people of us, and the group leader is Professor Maria Dolores Calzada, who has a deep expertise in microwaves, atmospheric pressure microwave discharges and their application. And actually, these are the 2 most important research lines that we are following. First of all, we are focused on understanding the plasma. Atmospheric pressure, microwave plasmas. What we are very interested in is to know which is the kinetics in the plasma, which are the density of interesting particles in the plasma, charged particles like, for example, electron density, the energy of those electrons, measuring electron temperature, also the energy of heavy particles with gas temperature and so on. With this knowledge, with the knowledge of knowing the plasma parameters, we are able to know study the thermodynamic equilibrium in the plasma, which is very useful for controlling plasma applications, because it's necessary to understand what is going on in the plasma to control what are we producing at the end. So this is what we call our research line basic research, because we are all the time like researching new ways of understanding the plasma and so on, and also performing new analysis in new microwave plasma sources. If we move to our research lines focused on the applied research, once we control what is going on in the plasma, we apply this knowledge to perform these applications. At the beginning, we were focused on sample analysis, then we moved to food preservation, and then right now we are like spending most of our energy for hydrogen production, the formation of two-dimensional material, and also the modification of surfaces. So what kind of plasmas are we using? Okay, in this slide, you can see 3 different microwave energy coupled devices. All of them were donated by Professor Michel Moissan from the University of Montreal, who developed and patented all these 3 devices, and also he's like really an expert in this field. We work very closely to him. As I said, he donated our devices. Applications. I will, in this part of the talk, I will like explain like very fast some of the application to move to a more detailed description of hydrogen and graphene formation. So the first applications, as I mentioned before, we were focused on developing a technique for analysis of chemical samples to be like an alternative of ICP, indutable plasmas, for this idea. So we patented this novel way of doing the analysis of chemical samples. Then food preservation. As I said before, we work very closely with Professor Michel Moissan from the University of Montreal. He developed a way of doing the sterilization of microorganisms and so on. So we thought that we could like extrapolate the information to and apply them to the food. At the beginning, we work to reduce the germination rate of lentils seeds. So we apply a post-discharge of our argon nitrogen plasma, and what we observe is that those lentils that have been more directly in contact with the plasma reduce a lot the germination rate and also the growth, as you can see in this slide. These are the lentils that are more affected by the plasma, and then less and less and less. So this result was really promising. So we tried to move forward, and then we tried also to apply the plasma, the post-discharge, to sherry phenol wine, just to see how this plasma could affect to the browning of this sherry phenol wine. So we did the treatment. We treated some samples with argon nitrogen gas only, another sample with only argon post-discharge, and then the last one with argon nitrogen post-discharge. After 2 years of storage in a dark environment, we realized that the samples treated with the argon nitrogen post-discharge keeps the original color of the sherry phenol wine. So it seems that in the in this post-discharge, there is something that is preventing the wine to be brown, to change the color. So after that, since in our group, all of us, we are physicists, we have no idea about biochemistry, chemistry more or less, but biochemistry no, genetics no. So we started a collaboration with experts in that field. We work with the campus of International Agri-Food Excellence at the University of Córdoba, with the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, and the Department of Botany, Ecology, and Plant Physiology. Why? Because we are able to control the plasma, characterize it, but we don't know what are we doing to the food, to the seeds. So we started a collaboration together with a research project, and we studied the effect of the plasma to quinoa seeds. What we observe, again, we stop completely the germination of the seeds of quinoa seeds. So our question to the experts in the field were, okay, maybe we are killing the seeds. So they performed some analysis. They measured the DNA and also the genes, and the seeds are alive. I mean, we are not destroying the seeds, and but we are doing something that I cannot present like very instant because it's under patent right now, so I am not allowed to explain in detail. But something that I could see is that the plasma have a specific action on proteins related to the germination of the seeds. Okay. Moving to the next application, what we do also is to activate and cleaning the surface of metals, more specifically about aluminum and also steel. What we are able to do with our plasma system, we have our surfatron device, as I mentioned before, and there is a substrate which is moving through this plasma. And after that, we realized that with this treatment, we were modifying the surface of the metals. What are we doing? We are removing like a small hydrocarbon layer that is on the top of the material, and also we are introducing some OH radicals, which makes the surface more hydrophilic. So according to the standards, what we are doing is cleaning the samples for further processing. So this plasma could be presented as an alternative for the cleaning of metal surfaces. And the last two research lines focus on the application is the study of the decomposition of ethanol molecules in our atmospheric pressure plasma without using any catalyst, no using any substrate, to obtain hydrogen and graphene nanosheets. This process is also patented, and this is what I am going to focus in this talk. So right now, I'm going to move to explain you more in details, which are the fundamentals of microwave atmospheric pressure plasmas, and more specifically, how it's possible to produce hydrogen and graphene with our system. So, all of you I know that you are very used to the idea of the plasma. In all microwave plasmas operating at atmospheric pressure work in the same way. We have electrons which collide by an elastic collision with heavy particles. These electrons will be accelerated by the collisions, whereas the heavy particles are not being really affected, let's say. So after that, the electrons are being accelerated, and then they will have more energy to collide in an elastic way with atoms and molecules to produce the excitation and the ionization. So In this sense, we are working with what is called non-thermal plasma, which means that the energy of heavy particles is lower than the energy of the electrons. What does it mean? It means that the energy applied to the plasma is not used to heating up the gas, but to provide energy to electrons to facilitate excitation, ionization, but also dissociation of molecules inside the plasma. Something that is really like an advantage of this kind of plasma is that it has no electrodes, and the plasma itself depends on experimental conditions. So we can move in a very wide range of electron densities and electron temperatures depending on the experimental condition, and we can move and we can select in which domain we would like to work depending on the application that we are performing. Besides, it's possible to control in situ our plasma by optical emission spectroscopy, which will give us an idea of plasma species, the density of these species, and so on, and could help us to understand plasma kinetics, and also mass spectrometry. With mass spectrometry, what we are doing is analyzing the gases out after the plasma. So in this sense, it's very helpful for us to have a complete view of the plasma process itself. We are working with two different kinds of microwave-induced plasmas. The first one is, oops, sorry. I don't know how to remove because we are missing some.
Yeah.
Always difficult. Sorry. Okay, in any case.
You can take it and put it on the machine. Just like that.
No. Okay, perfect. I don't know. Okay, in any case, I prefer it here around here. Okay, what I was saying, that we are working with two kind of discharges, microwave discharges. The first one is what is presented in this slide, is what we call surface wave discharges. These plasmas are created inside of a quartz tube. Something that is very characteristic of this kind of plasma is that the electromagnetic field has its maximum in the electric walls, and it helps to the propagation of the waves. Which are the plasma parameter characteristic of this kind of plasma? We are working with electron densities of these with these values, this energy for the electrons, and something very interesting is that all along the plasma, all along the plasma column, we have more or less the same gas temperature. So the energy of the ions is quite constant along all the plasma column. What kind of an application are we doing with this plasma? We are producing hydrogen, also graphene and multi-wall carbon nanotubes, and the modification of surface and of the application for food preservation. Actually, one feature really interesting and really important for our applications is that working in a specific condition of flows, for example, working with argon and argon nitrogen, under certain condition, it is possible to have what is called afterglow or plasma post-discharge. Here in the slide, you can see that the discharge is the brightest one, whereas the afterglow is the more diffuse area. And the difference is that in the discharge, we have our ions, electrons, excited species, neutrals, and so on. However, in the afterglow is a very weakly ionized media where there are not a lot of ions and electrons. So which kind of particles we have in this afterglow? What we have is what is called the long-lived excited excited state species, metastable species. They are still high energetic, but are not ions, of course. So something interesting and very important is that despite having these excited particles all along the afterglow, if we move far from the start afterglow to the end, the temperature, gas temperature decreases a lot. So this idea, allows us for the treatment of thermosensitive materials like seeds, like food, and also polymers. But also it's interesting that since we don't have ions in our afterglow, there is no ion bombardment on the surface and no surface edge. So we can take advantage of this specific part of this plasma. What, as I said before, the afterglow cannot be considered as a plasma because there is not these ionized particles. But in the afterglow we can find reactive species, these excited species, and that they are promoting some action in different surfaces. The other, all what I have been talking about was, remember, surface wave discharges. We have another kind of discharges, microwave discharges, which are created via microwave plasma torch. Why do we have this plasma torch? Because in general, plasma torches run with, the discharge are operating open in air, and these plasmas are more robust than those of surface wave discharges. For example, surface wave discharges that we are creating with a surfatron device are limited in power, so we cannot apply more than 200 watts. With the torch, actually, the torch that we are using is a torch injection as also axial guide donné. We are able to apply even 1000 watts if we want. And with this system, it's possible to introduce a higher amount of precursors of whatever the application that you are going to perform. And another important thing is that when Professor Michel Moissan designing it, he designed it with the idea of running this system at industrial level. Why? Because it's possible to have like an arrays of this system. So instead of having one, as you can see in this picture, you can have 2, 3, 4, whatever, and then we can multiply the effect of the plasma. As I said before, the discharge is created open to the air in the tip of this field application. So we will have like this flame, it's like a dart and a flame, and since it's open to the air, nitrogen and oxygen from air, will affect the plasma kinetics. So in these pictures, you can see an argon discharge generated with this torch, with different argon flows from a lower value to a higher one. You can see that the morphology and the color completely change. What does it mean? It means that when we increase the argon flow, we are like limiting the entrance of air from the surroundings, and the nitrogen and the oxygen from the air have a less impact on the plasma itself. You can see here, for example, in this emission spectrum, this is generated with the smaller argon flow. You can see that there is not atomic emissions of argon or nitrogen lines, but only molecular ones. even if the plasma is running in argon, you can see there is no argon in the spectrum, but molecules that are coming from a mixture of argon and nitrogen. If we increase the argon, we are limiting the access of the nitrogen and oxygen into the discharge, and then we can see the argon atomic lines as well as other molecular emissions due to the presence of nitrogen and oxygen. Why I'm highlighting this? Because this will be a key feature for the development of hydrogen and graphene production with this torch. Okay, so right now that I try to summarize very briefly the fundamentals of our devices, of our discharges, let's move now to see if it's possible to produce hydrogen and two-dimensional carbon, solid carbon. So the idea, what is? We have a main carrier gas, which will be argon. Then we have an organic precursor that will be ethanol. So we are going to introduce the ethanol together with the gas into our surface wave discharge, sustaining with the surfatron, and also our discharge created with our Tiago torch. So then what we do is to characterize our plasma by optical emission spectroscopy. After that, we need to control which are the gaseous byproducts that we are obtaining by the decomposition of ethanol by mass spectrometry. And then we will realize if we are producing hydrogen, in which way, if ethanol molecules are completely decomposed or not. And then after that, since under some certain experimental conditions, we have a solid carbon formation, we analyze this solid carbon with a high resolution transmission electron microscopy, Raman spectroscopy, X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, and also X-ray diffraction. So let's start by studying how ethanol molecules are decomposed by a surface wave discharge sustained with a surfatron. I mean, we are introducing our ethanol into an argon plasma. You can see here the color of the column and also the length of the column. And when we introduce ethanol molecules, the plasma changes completely. What we observe? That the plasma is shorter and also that the color is different. What does it mean? First, it means that if we are shortening the plasma, it means that all the energy is more concentrated in a shorter space. So the linear power density increases. We have more energy concentrated in this space. What about the color? Okay, since the plasma emits radiation, these radiations, since the color change, the radiation change. Why? Because we are having different excitations in our plasma. Here you have the emission spectrum of typical argon plasma with argon emission lines. And when we introduce ethanol, we observe that the intensity of these argon lines decreasing, and in some of them even disappear. Why? Because the regular excitation ionization process is completely destroyed. We introduce ethanol molecules. Our electrons, instead of being used to excitate atoms, these electrons are used for decomposing the molecule. So we are going to have carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen atoms in our discharge. How we know that? Because in the emission spectrum, we can observe emission of atomic carbon lines and also of hydrogen lines. But also, it is possible to observe molecular bonds belonging to the C2. Okay, so from the radiation, we can say that at least we are decomposing some amount of ethanol molecules that we are introducing. But to make sure of this idea of which is the percentage of the decomposition of ethanol, we use a mass spectrometry. So in this first graph, what we are comparing is the a mixture of argon and ethanol gas with no plasma. This is what we call plasma off. There is no plasma at all. However, the orange line represents the mass spectrum of the same gas composition, but with the plasma on. So we are detecting the gases out from plasma. We can observe that after switching on the plasma, the baseline of ethanol, which is located at mass structure ratio 31, this line completely drops. So it allows us to conclude that the ethanol is completely decomposed in our plasma. What about the production of gases? Here in this graph, next to the previous one, we are comparing the gases coming from impure argon plasma and an argon plasma with ethanol molecules. What we can see that the mass spectrum is quite different. The black one is the gases from the argon plasma, and the blue one, argon ethanol, the gases from argon ethanol plasma. You can see mass structure ratio equal to 2, which belongs to the production of hydrogen, increases a lot. Actually, it is the one that most increased. Which is another gas that we are obtaining by the decomposition of ethanol, carbon monoxide. These are the two most important gases byproducts obtained by the decomposition of ethanol. However, there are also some gaseous gases, which are acetylene, also methane, ethylene, and diacetylene. I remark that because we will see later on, the way the ethanol is decomposed, favoring the production of some hydrocarbons or others, will be very important to understand the formation of carbon nanostructures. So, as I said before, these are the gaseous byproducts that we obtain, but also we are obtaining solid material. It's very black. So at the beginning, we thought, okay, it's carbon coming from the ethanol. So we did some analysis of this material. First, we check its property by Raman spectroscopy. Here you can see the Raman spectrum of the material. We can observe the 2D and the G bands, which always appear in graphene and graphene-based materials. Actually, the other bands that are pointed out in the spectrum, D, 2LO, G plus D, and 2D plus, these bands are related to defects on the material. So, just by having a look of the Raman spectrum, we can say that the bands belonging to the related to the defects of the material are less intense than those related to the formation of few layers graphene nanosheets. This band 2D and G. So okay, we know that we have graphene-like structures in our material, but it is possible to quantify the number of defects and the number of layers of our material. Keep in mind that the characterization of graphene is really tricky. There are many analysis techniques and so on, but there is not like a straightforward way to say, okay, this is a pure graphene with one layer and so on. But there are some indications that could give us an idea if we have a lot of defects or a lot of layers in our graphene. And this is related to the shape and intensity of, for example, this 2D peak. The thinner this peak is, the better. Because because the full width has maximum, maximum height of this band is close to 30 to 35 in the case of monolayer graphene. So the close to this value, the less amount of graphene layers that we will have. And also, the idea of numbers of layers could be given by the ratio between the intensity of the 2D band and the G band. For pure monolayer graphene, this intensity ratio is close to 2. So the closer the ratio is to 2, the better is the graphene. So what we are having from the Raman spectroscopy is that we have graphene with low defect and low number of layers, which was also supported by a high resolution transmission electron microscopy. We can see here the multi-layer graphene sheets and also the formation of carbon nanotubes. So what we are obtaining when decomposing ethanol with our sulfatron, with our surface wave discharges, is a mixture of a nanocomposite of graphene and carbon nanotubes. Let's move now to see if the formation of the gases and the solid material is similar when we work with our plasma torch. Here in this slide, you can see different pictures of our plasma when we are modifying ethanol flow from lower to higher values, and also ion flow from lower to higher values while keeping the same amount of ethanol. You can see that the morphology of the plasma changed. And it's different depending on the experimental conditions. This is something totally different to what happened with the surface wave discharge, which was all the time the plasma, let's say, green. Here we have different colors of our plasma, which means that we have different plasma kinetics depending on the experimental conditions. And this experimental condition will promote different byproducts formation. So here we have like a summary of what is happening if we are considering low argon or ethanol flow, where the plasma looks more purple. And in the bottom part, a picture of our plasma with high argon or ethanol flow, which is green the plasma. Working with high or low flows is translated to have a higher or low impact or lower impact of nitrogen and oxygen from the air surrounding the discharge. If we are working with low argon or ethanol flow, the nitrogen and oxygen from the air surrounding the plasma have really an impact on the kinetics. Then it's formed CN species. If this nitrogen or oxygen is less important in the discharge, we are promoting CN species, but also C2 species. So as I said before, it's important to keep in mind that depending on the experimental condition, different plasma species are formed and also different byproducts. So in the case of having a really important effect of the air, which are our gases byproducts, we are producing hydrogen, but we are producing also water and carbon dioxide. We are and also carbon monoxide. We are forming hydrogen in a not eco-friendly way. However, if we work with higher argon or ethanol flows, the gases byproduct will change. Now we will obtain hydrogen, carbon monoxide, but other like hydrocarbons like acetylene, ethylene, and the acetylene and so on. So in that case, not only we obtain gaseous byproducts, but also solid ones. So here we can see like a really important difference of the way the ethanol is decomposed. Under certain conditions, where nitrogen is more important, gaseous byproducts are obtained differently if the nitrogen and oxygen are not so important. And also we have this carbon. Keep in mind that if we have something that we realize is that solid carbon formation is only takes place when acetylene is formed, which is related to the formation of C2 species. This will give us an idea of how the ethanol is decomposed, but how the graphene or graphene nanocomposite is formed. So let's analyze our material. Once again, we analyze the material by Raman spectroscopy, XPS, and HRTN. The Raman spectrum is quite similar to the one that I showed you previously. The difference are, the most important difference is the intensity of the band. Here, remember that this and this band, 2D and G bands, are related to the formation of graphene. And remember, the thinner and most intense this one is the better. So in this case, we are obtaining a low defective and high purity graphene nanosheets. By XPS, we observe that mostly close to the 100% of the material is carbon. And here you have the carbon core level. And if we do the convolution of this signal, we can see that is dominated by carbon with sp2 hybridization, okay? And the sp3 amount is really small, which supports the conclusion of having low defective material. What about the number of layers? As I said before, the number of layers is related to the full width half maximum of this peak, which is getting closer to the value reported for graphene monolayer, and also the intensity ratio of the 2D and G bands is getting close to the to 2. So it means that we have a very high purity graphene with not a lot of defects. It's important because it would be necessary to understand the formation of graphene, to understand that the fact that the discharges generated with the torch are open to air give us a clue of how the process is taking place. Here you have, like, we are observing two different routes for the decomposition of ethanol. The first one which takes place when air is more, have a stronger influence on the kinetics, and plasma gas temperature is always below 4,500 kelvins. We are obtaining only gaseous byproducts. We are obtaining hydrogen, but not in a very green way. And in the case of having higher gaseous temperature, which means that we are having low air influence on the discharge, we are obtaining graphene and also hydrogen by a green process. As I said before, there is a relationship between the production of C2 species. Here you have in red C2 species in the plasma, and also acetylene formation as gaseous byproducts. As I said, under certain conditions where gas temperature is lower than this value, we don't have a lot of amount of C2 species, and the formation of acetylene is limited. But as soon as we increase this plasma gas temperature, acetylene appears as well as C2 species. So keep in mind that C2 species and acetylene and graphene are correlated. Okay, so now, okay, we have demonstrated that we are able to decompose ethanol with our microwave devices, but now it's time to think about if our technologies are real alternatives for the production, mass scale production of hydrogen and graphene. Okay, we have demonstrated that it's possible to have defect-free, high purity hydrogen by a green process. And also with different systems, we have the possibility of working under different experimental conditions. So our technology could be said that is very versatile, eco-friendly. And the idea of working with the Diago torch that can be implemented on an industrial scale means that, okay, our technology could be scaled at some point. So it's time to think about how it's possible to increase the production of these byproducts, and if it's cost attractive, the technology. I mean, if it's worth investing in it. So for that, we are going to think about which is the most advantageous decomposition reaction of the ethanol. I mean, which is the ideal reaction pathway for ethanol decomposition. Here you have the ethanol molecules that to increase the production of hydrogen and graphene should follow this reaction. So 3 moles of hydrogen per mole of ethanol and 1 mole of graphene per mole of ethanol. In this sense, we have to check how the production rate, amount of material or amount of hydrogen per time, the selectivity, I mean, how close our process is, how close our reaction is to this ideal one, if we are creating less or 3 moles of hydrogen per mole of ethanol and so on. Also the yield, which is the ethanol decomposition multiplied by the selectivity, and also the energy yield, which indicates how much amount of material or gas is generated per unit of power. These values should be maximized. And we should be minimize the amount of energy that we are using for producing the hydrogen and graphene. So how are we going to play with these values, trying to optimize them? Well, playing with the plasma source, the main gas flow, the ethanol flow, and the input power. So first of all, what we did, we checked with our 2 systems, Surfatron and Diago torch, which is the maximum amount of ethanol that can be introduced. I mean, if we introduce higher amount of ethanol, it is supposed to have much more hydrogen and graphene being formed. So this is something that we check. Here you have the maximum ethanol amount that can be introduced in our system, considering different argon gas flows. Remember, I said that our Surfatron device is limited in power. So our device cannot work with powers higher than 200 watts, in contrast to the torch, which can work with higher powers. So in this case, if we think about the Surfatron-based discharges, we need to keep in mind that we are limited in the power. So to increase the amount of ethanol into the discharge and then maybe having more hydrogen and more material, it's necessary to play with the main gas flow. In the case of the Diago torch, these kind of discharges, can withstand larger amount of the precursor, and keeping in mind that with higher argon and ethanol flows, We have a green process, so it's time to play with ethanol flow and input power. Okay, so let's start by playing with argon flow and surfactant discharges. Here you have the formation of gaseous byproducts, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, acetylene, and methane. And it's also plotted the amount of material that is produced. You can see that for hydrogen, it seems that the reaction is more, is favor the formation of hydrogen for low argon flows. What about the material? We can observe that the amount of material decreases with the amount of with the flow of argon. Here in this graph, it is plotted in green the amount of methane that is formed, which increases with argon flow. Also, the amount of the material which decreases with argon flow. There must be something in our plasma that is being changed. What is gas temperature? You can see here in blue the values of our gas temperature, which decreases with argon flow. So what we have obtained that once again, as we decrease as we have low values of gas temperature, the formation of solid material is limited because other light hydrocarbons are formed instead, for example, methane. Maybe you are wondering, okay, is the material that you obtain with the same qualities? This is something that we are working right now. We have observed that the material is not exactly the same. It has different properties. Once again, have a look of the 2D bar here. It seems that the material created under these experimental conditions is the quality is better. But right now we are thinking about why it is this, because gas temperature promotes the amount of material, but is not related. The gas temperature of the plasma doesn't make change the different qualities of the materials, only the amount of the solid material. So as I said, it's something that we are working on right now. So now let's change and see what's happened with our discharges generated with our plasma torch. In that case, we measure the production of hydrogen and graphene formation when ethanol flow increases while keeping argon flow constant. And on the other hand, what happened with hydrogen and graphene if we modify input power while keeping ethanol flow constant? What can we observe by hydrogen production? We can see that the production of hydrogen is more or less similar regardless of the input microwave power. However, it was quite logical, increasing the amount of the precursor, increasing the amount of ethanol, increases hydrogen production. However, this increase is not linear. What does it mean? It means that this hydrogen selectivity decreases. So in that case, for higher ethanol flows, the formation of hydrocarbons gases is favored instead of hydrogen. What about graphene production? Let's have a look of what's happening with our graphene amount when we increase the power. This is in blue points. You can see that having the same amount of the precursor, increasing the input power increases considerably the amount of the graphene formed. What's happening if we increase ethanol flow, keeping the power constant? Okay, it seems to increase with ethanol flow and then decreasing. Why? Because under these conditions, we are forming a larger quantity of light hydrocarbon, such as methane or ethylene. What about the quality of the material? In the case of Thiago torch discharges, graphene formed by the decomposition of ethanol is not affected neither by modifying ethanol amount or changing input parameter. So it can be suggested that microwave power is an ideal parameter for the scalability of the process, since we are increasing the production but keeping the qualities of the materials. Let's put in perspective these results. Here we can see like a summary of the production of hydrogen by different microwave plasmas using different precursors and so on. It's in blue the result that we have found in our research, and something that it's really important from our equipment is from our discharge is that we have almost 100% of the composition of ethanol. Also, the selectivity of the process for hydrogen production seems to be high according to some experimental conditions, and we are minimizing the amount of energy that it's needed for the it's needed for the formation of hydrogen. If we compare with the use of microwave plasmas for the production of hydrogen, we can have a look of the energy which is required for hydrogen production in water electrolysis, which is the most common technology for the production of hydrogen, and it's range between these two values. Have a look of our values here. You can see that are much higher, 2 orders of magnitude. So we are still far from having a competitive technology to produce hydrogen. But once again, keep in mind that this result was obtained with the Thiago torch, which can be prepared to multiply the values of hydrogen. So we are working in that way. What about graphene? Here again, you have the production rate, selectivity, energy yield, and the energy for the formation of graphene obtained by different microwave discharges, and the one that we are reporting, which are highlighted in green. In our case, the precursor decomposition is 100%, but we need to improve the selectivity for the formation of graphene as compared to, for example, this research. You see, they show a very high selectivity of the process. So we are working on that way to minimize the amount of energy that we will need for producing this graphene. What about other technology for the production of graphene? There are many ways of producing graphene, but unfortunately there is not like one that create or generate high quality graphene and a high amount of graphenes by the organic precursor. Here you have a comparison of graphene obtained by liquid phase exfoliation, which is one of the most common and used graphene production techniques. Have a look of the 2D band. The quality of the material formed by microwave plasma discharge, not only with the graphene of our plasmas, but in general, microwave plasmas, the quality is much better than the one obtained by liquid phase exfoliation. So there are, in the scientific community, there is really an interest in developing microwave discharges for obtaining graphene or graphene nanocomposites, or whatever. Just as a summary, and just to highlight the importance of controlling plasma kinetics and knowing the byproducts formation, it's that here, this is a representation of how the ethanol molecules is decomposed in microwave discharges. Here, ethanol is decomposed, then all the gases byproducts are formed, and in the, which is called the hot plasma where it's the discharge, and then in the post-discharge region, which is called the assembly zone, and then graphene is formed. The amount of graphene depends on the plasma gas temperature, as I said before. Why? Because there are two different ways of decomposing ethanol molecules, and the gases byproducts and also solid byproducts depend on if we have high temperature plasma or low temperature plasma. So these results that were found by other authors are in agreement with what we have found from an experimental point of view. Just to finish, I would like to mention, to highlight something. Imagine that this is the plasma, which is containing in the quartz tube generated with the surfatron, and here with the plasma torch, and we have the reactor. The solid material is deposited in the quartz tube walls and also in the quartz reactor walls. However, the quality and the kind of material is different in both cases. Here we have pure graphene material, and in the case of surfatron, we have a mixture of graphene and carbon nanotubes. So now, what are we doing? We are trying to figure out why it's so different. So our first hypothesis is that it depends on the hydrodynamics after the plasma, after the discharge. In that case, there is only one gas flow direction, whereas here we have a turbulent, let's say, behavior of the gas, where we have recirculation. So right now, there are two new components in our team that are an expert in the development of hydrodynamics models and multi-species two-temperature models. So what we are doing now is to try to modelize our plasma to control or to understand why we are having different kind of materials. I'm finishing this talk. So sorry, I don't know what time is it. Oh my goodness.
More or less 1 hour.
Thank
you.
So sorry.
Okay, so as Françoise is going to leave, we can open now the round for discussion. So are there any questions around?
I think that question could be in French if it is easier for those who are, but just in case for those who are in visio, if it is simplest for you.
Oui, il faut regarder les questions en visio. Et comment on voit? Il faut qu'on arrête, voilà, et qu'on voit s'il y a des petites mains levées. Donc, dans le discussion, il y en a un.
C'est un commentaire.
un commentaire.
So is there any questions?
Bon, if not, there's plenty.
Me, I will discuss with you tomorrow. Sorry,
I'm so
really
sorry.
No, really. Thank you very much.
So let's wait for more. So my first question would be how you are assuming that shows the graphene as formed in the plasma, and why you are not at least taking into consideration the possibility that the graphene was already present in the ethanol.
You mean that?
That the plasma would just reveal the occurrence of graphene as a primary solid phase, but very diluted, as petrochemical products always are natural. So they've gone very high energy conditions once upon in their life, and all petrochemical products do contain graphene.
Okay, there are a lot of research concerning how this graphene is formed, and from experimental results, it has been shown that it's necessary to decrease a lot the temperature for the nucleation of the graphene. For example, in the presentation,
Yeah, but the key question is the nucleation from what? Because you're not explaining
From
your
what?
talk. From what kind of precursor?
So
I mean the real precursor. Yeah.
The real precursor is the carbon atoms and C2 species in the plasma.
Yeah. You suppose, in fact, the nucleation from atoms and not the nucleation from ultrafine nanoparticles.
Yeah, that's it.
So you assume that there are no detrital. I mean, detrital at nano level, huh? I'm speaking. And any petrochemical product is going to contain graphene.
Okay.
So, and it's just, I don't understand, especially when you are showing the pictures. For me, they are not typically graphene nanotube. They are, well crystallized, but more graphite-like.
You mean here?
In the slide 26.
26? 25. Here.
Yeah, 25, sorry. Yeah. That's your defining.
Sorry, let me share with the screen with
just stacking.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay. So for you, this is not carbon nanotubes.
It's a stacking of something.
Yeah.
But they are not really typical graphene nanotube as you would expect from nucleation from scratch. So it's, at least for me, when I'm characterizing, so the geologist, and so when I'm characterizing material and as I'm performing plasma discharge on petrochemical products, and I always find this kind of structure, this range of structure, and I'm going to define them as pre-existing material because I reveal them. I do not produce them.
Yeah, but something that I don't understand is how the graphene could be coming from ethanol molecules.
No, it's not going to come from ethanol molecule. During the decomposition, you are going to concentrate the solid product, which is as microtraces, or not as nanotraces. And so, in fact, your graphene, as you know from the publication of Google, your graphene is wrapped into wrinkled, very dense wrinkled balls, and under the energy of the plasma is going to open. So, in fact, it's totally not detectable as ultrafine nanoparticles. So, this has been well described in many publications. But it's why, whenever you are a new plasma people, community, you never take into consideration the possibility of this.
Okay, so I will take.
Yeah. So that's why I'm asking, because it's why I came to work here to understand, this process and how you make a distinction between nucleation in the plasma and, in fact, transformation, which is extremely important. Distinction is good, especially for your kind of application.
Okay. It's something that I will take into account for the future. Yeah, I will think about this. Yeah, please go ahead.
Then after, how you estimate the amount of graphene you are producing? I think it's in the very last part in D30. 5, whatever.
Yeah.
You make an estimation.
No. What we have, for example, in the case of, we are having our plasma reactor, and in one of the exits there is a filter where the nanoparticles are going to be placed, but also the material is deposited in the reactor walls. So we are taking the material from scratch in the reactor walls.
Yes, it's because it must be very difficult to collect the very precisely,
that's why
and wait.
Yeah, we perform the experiment like 10 times, and then we do the average, because it's all, as you said, it's very difficult to have a very precise measure of that. That's why we repeat this a lot of time. But at least we know that this is the minimum amount that we are producing. Probably we are losing in the process.
I guess so.
But at least, as I said, 10 times the same process, and then we have an estimation.
But what I like so much is the last slides where you suspect that the hydrodynamic is going to affect the crystallinity of the material you are producing, that you have much better.
Sorry.
In the last slide, in the very last one, showing the distinction between the torch, plasma torch conditions. The slide, that one, when you are showing the two design, the two operative design, when you suspect that hydrodynamic is going to affect, in fact, the crystallinity in the recirculation. This is really interesting.
It's
the fact
something
that you are producing more homogeneous nanostructure.
That's it. That's it. That's why we started like this research approach for understanding why. So this is something that just started. There are 2 postdocs right now in our group that are developing this model and try to correlate with our experimental results.
The more you can strain, more you're going to be to induce stacking, whereas here it's going to really clean the material. Okay, so maybe there are other questions. D'autres questions dans la salle?
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned producing hydrogen and carbon. Do you separate the 2 gases after?
At this moment, we are not separating those gases. We are just simply identifying them and quantifying them.
But you mentioned like your process may be a way to produce hydrogen, so I imagine that you should produce hydrogen to find a way to separate.
Yes, and also something that we are starting working with people from organic chemistry. They are developing new devices for transporting hydrogen and so on, that allows the incorporation of carbon monoxide together with hydrogen. So this is hydrogen cells could work with our gases, but in any case, as I said, we were limited to, we only wanted to see which were our gases. So this would be for next steps. Thank you very much.
Today, any ideas of the options to try to increase the yield efficiency?
Ideas.
Yeah, do you have any options or any way to try to increase?
Yes, of graphene, I guess.
No, to increase the yield efficiency for the hydrogen productions.
Hydrogen production.
Yes, you show tables with comparisons between different yield efficiency.
Yes, here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right now, we are trying to work with the Diago torch, which allows for introducing a higher amount of ethanol. And we are limited in terms of the amount of ethanol that we can introduce, but not because of the plasma, it's because of the equipment.
Okay.
So there are other equipment to introduce ethanol molecules in gas phase, which could provide a larger amount of ethanol. So maybe increasing ethanol amount we will see if the selectivity of the process for hydrogen production is still good enough. It seems that it's going to be decreasing when introducing ethanol and when increasing ethanol amount, but something that we have to check. Yeah. And also something that we would like to check is that here, you see, here we have only ethanol flows up to 4, but we would like to introduce higher amounts, let's say up to 100 grams per hour. I guess that the chart generated with the diagonals will withstand this amount, and also working with higher powers. Maybe it will be, because here what you see, it's only ethanol flows up to 4 grams per hour, but working with 300 watts. So this is the only experimental condition that has been tested. So it's worth exploring larger amounts of both ethanol and yeah, yes, go up. Because, for example, in the table here you can see the amount of the precursor flow. If we compare, we are far from there. But it's worth exploring that. No problem. Any other question?
Il y en a deux, dans la discussion, il y a deux remarques.
Okay. Didn't pay attention to currency. Yes, when we analyze by XPS our graphic, let me check. Here, we decomposed the carbon peak from XPS, and what we observe is that the core level is mainly dominated by SP2, and only a small percentage of SP3 was found, which actually is actually is an agreement with the low number of defects in Raman. So
yeah, but it's something strange. So it's again coming to the idea of remain from graphite, that the graphene would come from the graphite, because the fact that you have dominant sp2, something strange, because you would expect that graphene, if it's new formed from the gas phase, it should be equal, as you have a mixture of sp2 and sp3. You would why you are at the end having graphene mostly made from sp2. And it's clearly from the Raman spectra that it's dominantly graphene made from sp2. So well crystallized.
Yeah. Something that need to be explored. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's so different from all the graphene which are made from different conditions. So it's why for me it's really stamped that the precursor is graphite. It's not the acetylene.
Okay.
Voilà. Et il y avait encore une autre
question.
Yeah,
I know, but is there an attempt to scale up the process by operating the microwave discharge at lower frequency level? Oh no, it's something that we didn't think about. Actually, we are not able to work with different frequencies, lower frequency than 2.45 gigahertz. So it's something that we didn't think about. Maybe it could be a good idea for sure, but right now we are not able to do these kind of experiments.
Bon, merci. D'autres, c'est fini pour les questions qui étaient dans le chat. Oui. D'autres mains, on voit pas de mains. Non? Plus de questions? Eh ben, nous te remercions. Really thank you for this great talk.
Thank you.
That's been really inspiring.
Thank you very much for coming.